What is going on, Colts Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guy Cody here, on with us, special guest from the No Horsing Around Colts podcast, Mr. Zach Boyd himself. Zach, thanks for coming on, my friend. How have you been?
I've been doing very well, Cody, and as always, man, excited to get on here and talk ball with you.
Absolutely, man. And I know that you were at the game yesterday, the Colts' final preseason game. How was that experience for you?
It was really nice. I mean, actually, I hadn't had a chance to be down quite that low before. I was in row 6, so it was a little bit different experience preseason, but nonetheless, super exciting, fun to watch. And anytime you see Tom Brady come into the building, it's just a little more electric in that building for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you were able to get that experience, and anybody else who's down there, hope you had a fun experience as well. But Zach, now the Colts are done with the preseason. Fortunately, outside of the punter, the Colts have no significant injuries of note, which is great. Seems like everybody's going to be pretty much good to go. There's a few question marks, but most guys are going to be good to go for week number 1. With that being said, now we got to look at the 53-man roster a little bit more and kind of talk about, okay, so now we've seen some of the starters, we've seen some of the backups, we've seen some of the position battles. Who makes it? Who officially makes it? Obviously, roster cuts are on Tuesday, so we are going to be putting this out a day prior to that. So without further ado, I think we both have our 53-man roster predictions, and I'm anticipating, Zach, that we're going to have some that are a little bit different. We're going to have a couple positions where we carry a few more, a few less than each other. But all that to say, it's all going to come out to 53-man at the end of all of this. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with the offense, talking about the quarterbacks. Zach, how many quarterbacks are you keeping, and which ones are you keeping?
All right, so this one was obviously the hot topic, right, Cody? Everybody wants to know, who's in, who's out. I rolled with 3. I did go with obviously Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, and I think with Ellinger, for me, Cody, the potential of him being something more than just just a stash practice squad type of guy. I think there's something there. Chris Ballard kind of alluded to that when he drafted him. He said a great phrase about Sam Ellinger. He said, "I don't know what it is, but this kid has it." And you saw that with that scramble, that run for the touchdown. I just think that I don't know that he makes it to practice squad, and I think he's too valuable. At this point, he's kind of forced the hand of Chris Ballard and the Indianapolis Colts, and I'm rolling with him as one of the 3 quarterbacks on this initial 53-man roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I am doing the exact same there for all the reasons you said. Sam Ellinger, give him credit. He has been killing it in the preseason, albeit against the 3s and the 2s, but still, nonetheless, want to give him the proper credit that he's due. Definitely has earned his way onto a roster spot. There's been debate about QB2. I'm not ready to go there quite yet, Zach, but I certainly think the Colts have to roster him for the reasons you just said. So 3 quarterbacks it is. All right. That one was actually pretty fairly easy, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about running backs, though. How many running backs do the Colts keep? They have a slew of guys that were looking, to potentially round out that roster behind Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. So guys like, Philip Lindsay, Deion Jackson, C.J. Verdell, Tyson Williams, so many different guys that were looking for that final 53-man roster. But as it comes, Zach, we've seen a lot of all these guys. Who are your guys? How many are you keeping? And who are those guys?
So for me, I really went back and forth with this position, Cody, but I went with 4. Chris Ballard in the past has kind of always kept 4. I don't know that I see it necessary, but I think that's what I feel like Chris Ballard's going to do. And for that reason, obviously, Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines are going to be stables. I like Lindsey. And, one of the interesting things from being at that game is that Deion Jackson played ahead of Lindsey. And I don't know if that has anything to do with, depth chart as far as that goes. But I think they wanted to see how he would play against a little bit better competition as making a determination on him. He's a guy that I would say anytime there's a fringe position, if you can help on special teams, that gives you just a little bit better chance of making a football team when it comes right down to it. And our special teams has been a little bit up and down in the preseason. So I tend to go with guys who can help in the special teams department. And I think he's one of them. So I'm going to roll with 4, and we'll see what happens.
It's funny. We're exactly the same so far. Yeah. I got Taylor, I got Hines, I got Lindsey, and I got Deion Jackson. And originally, I don't know if I would have said Deion Jackson, but what we saw yesterday with obviously the Colts are feeling highly about him to give him run with the ones, So I'm definitely encouraged by that for him and his chances to make the final 53 man. So yeah, I'm going to roll with 4 as well. So that starts us off with 7 between the first 2. Now we move on to the wide receiver position. This is another position where there's been some guys recently that have started to really show out. We've had some question marks outside of the top 4. Who's going to round out this roster? How many are the Colts going to keep? Are they going to keep 5? Are they going to keep 6? What are your thoughts here on the wide receiver position?
So this is one of the positions that I would highlight that they're probably going to have a little bit of change as this 53 starts off, and then you've got that 24-hour period. But I'm going to start with the 6. And it was a real, battle inside of my head. Do you go with, 3 tight ends and 6 receivers, or do you go with 4 tight ends and 5 receivers? I went with 6, just because I think those 6 are the best pass catchers, the best combination that you can go with. Obviously Pittman Jr. And I'm going to go with Paris Campbell, Ashton Doolin, as well as Alec Pierce. Those are the 4 that's kind of been entrenched since training camp. I'm going to go Strawn and Patman. I think Patman can help out in the special teams role as well, as we talked about a second ago. I think Patman is vital, and he's had a good preseason. He's definitely had a couple good games in a row. And I know a lot of people will point, well, it's just against the 3s, it's just against the 2s. Well, that's not his fault, right? He just does what he has to do when he's on the field, and he does a pretty good job of it. So for that reason, I'm going to go with those 6. But I would say this, Cody, in my opinion, love to hear what you have to say. I think a veteran wide receiver gets brought in when it's all said and done. I just think you're a little too young there, and you need somebody that you can count on a little bit more steady at the wide receiver position. But I'll start with the 6 on the 53.
I mean, you've known me, I've been team veteran receiver ever since, this offseason. I wanted them to get some sort of guy to complement Pittman, a little bit more. And, obviously we like what Alec Pierce is bringing, but he's still raw. He's improved a lot. But again, he's still a rookie. It's hard to fully bank on him to be the number 2 right away, I feel like. So for that reason, I'm totally on board for that. And there'll probably be a couple guys that could be of interest to the Colts. Even, a guy yesterday, Scotty Miller, who, is probably going to get released from Tampa Bay as well. Maybe he's a guy that the Colts would look into, or maybe there's some other guys as well. But I'm going to keep 6 as well. I agree with you, but I disagree with the last guy on the roster. I'm going to actually keep Kiki Kuti. And you want to hear why I'm going to keep Kiki Kuti is because of what he showed you on special teams yesterday. It's so valuable to have guys that can handle the return game. And, he obviously has a speed to boot as well. And, I think about it like this, Zach, if, say Paris Campbell goes down again, okay, who's going to be your kind of backup slot? We know Hines is going to get some looks in there, but I feel like Kuti is the next guy up. And I'd rather have a combination. As much as I like Strawn, I do feel like, Strawn can be pushed through waivers and you can keep him on your practice squad for at least one more year. But what Kuti offers is just something different. And your bottom 2 wide receivers there are different skill sets. And I think that's important to have kind of some versatility on your wide receiver room. So for that reason, I'm going to keep Kiki Kuti just because of his prowess on special teams and what he showed you in the return game last night.
Yeah, I think that, and that's a very good point. He's just a little bit different skill level, which you like to have a little bit of versatility up and down that wide receiver group. I couldn't disagree with that. I was really back and forth. For me, I like the upside trajectory of Strawn a little bit more when it comes down to it. I'm not sure that both of them wouldn't have a chance at passing, waivers. We're going to find out, right? We're going to find out in the next 48 hours. But for me, I just think I asked myself, who could I live without? And I think Kuti was how I justified it. But there's no argument, no gripe there. I think it's very, very good point you made up with the special teams contribution. And he's played in NFL football games, like meaningful football games. We all know full well what he did to us in Houston when he was a Texan. So, he is capable of going out there and contributing and helping his football team for sure.
I do also wonder, Isaiah Rodgers, if his role continues to increase in this defense, would it make more sense to give Kuti the nod at kick returner and give Isaiah Rodgers more rest on the sidelines so that he can be 100% as he can, coming into the game and actually making an impact on the defense. That would be kind of my other argument as well. Just another guy, another capable guy that's shown you something in the return department, at least gives you the option if you want to give Isaiah Rodgers a little bit of a breather there. So that's kind of my rationale, but I totally get what you're saying too. But I do think Strawn's a guy that, he did have, obviously he's looked really good. I felt like yesterday you didn't see a whole lot from him. So I think he's not really like a hot commodity, which means that he could probably pass through waivers and he would still be a part of your team. And if you feel like teams are coming after him, maybe then you decide, oh, we want to protect him or whatever you want to do there. But yeah, 6 wide receivers nonetheless. Let's move on now to the tight end position. I don't feel like this one, since we both kept 6, is much of a question mark how many we're going to keep and the guys we're going to keep. I think it's pretty open and shut with Mo Alley Cox, Kylan Granson, and Jelani Woods. Do you kind of agree there? Are you kind of on that same page as me?
Absolutely. I think they're going to keep the 3. The only thing I would say is when it's time to get in season, I wouldn't be surprised if Ballard goes and picks up a 4th and maybe has to take something off of another position down the road. You'd like to have a guy who could block a little bit better. I know Mo Alley's kind of taken on that role of Jack Doyle. But that's a physical part of football, Cody, and you always worry, what if Mo Alley Cox's body breaks down as the season goes, and you don't really have a guy in there as a tight end position that's really more – we have, those hybrid tight ends, with Granson and Woods. They're more of your pass-catching tight ends. So that's a position I would be looking out into the future as a position that Ballard might be scouring that waiver wire and saying, hey, I'd like to get a veteran presence in here. And just a little bit more, but we've talked about that steady presence. But yeah, 3, no doubt about it, no arguments. It's a slam dunk for me, and that's the way I would go with it.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the offensive line as a unit, obviously different positions within that. How many offensive linemen are you keeping? Which positions are you keeping, and which guys are you keeping?
Okay, so I'm gonna keep 8. This is probably gonna be my most unpopular right here, but I'm gonna go with 8. And simply stated, I just don't think there's a lot of talent there past these 8. If I'm really being honest right now, I think there needs to be an upgrade. We need to figure out something as far as bringing in a little bit more depth. Talk about a guy like Jason Spriggs getting cut so early on in camp. I was a little bit of a head scratcher with some of the guys who came in and tried to fit that role and just haven't really shown out so much. But I'm going to go with, obviously, you've got your Pryor, Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Danny Pentner, Braden Smith. I'm going to go with Will Fries, as well as the other Kelly as a backup. I think Dennis Kelly's getting closer to being healthy with that knee. That'll be interesting to see, by the way. And then Ryman on the outside. But I say 8 because of this reason, Cody, because I think 100%, however it has to play out, I think we go out and find somebody. I don't know if that's via trade like he did last year with, trading for Matt Pryor and doing a pick swap. I don't know what they're going to do there, but I think that's a position right now, interior offensive line and interior defensive line, you probably need something just a little bit better right there. So for now, I'm going with 8.
This is going to be the first time we disagree because I honestly have been encouraged by Wesley French and what he's done to the backup center position. Specifically last night, I thought he played pretty well, all things considered. So I'm keeping 9. The only addition I would have is Wesley French at center. So, you have your 9, you have Kelly as kind of your backup swing tackle, you have Fries as your backup guard, and then you have French as your backup center or your third string center, however you want to look at it there, depending on Pinter, of course. So I'm probably not as inclined to, be as nervous about this interior offensive line. I could certainly see a scenario where maybe they do sign a veteran and then they release like a Wesley French, but I'm perfectly okay, I guess, with where they are. I'm more okay, I would say, with where the offensive line depth is on the interior than the defensive line depth. I'll just say that. So agree to disagree, but I'm going to keep 9 and you keep 8. So that means you have 24 so far on the offense and I have 25. I believe that if my math is correct, that's where we stand right now. Yep.
What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm introducing our new sponsor, Home Field, a premium collegiate apparel brand out of Indianapolis that has incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Home Field, being a local brand to Indianapolis, is partnering with the Indianapolis Colts to bring you a new collection of Colts apparel. This is Home Field's first NFL collection. They're super excited to be involved with the Indianapolis Colts, and we're excited to help promote their new designs. They have 6 new designs. They have a hooded sweatshirt, crew neck, 2 different tees, joggers, and a jacket. Now, if I say so myself, I'm definitely going to be rocking the sweatshirt and the joggers, guys, because they look extremely comfortable, and I'm definitely going to need them for the fall and winter season. It's the perfect collection to have for you guys to kick off the NFL season. It is going to be launching August 27th at 12 p.m. Eastern, so be on the lookout for it. And if this is already passed, make sure to go check out the Home Field site and be able to get yours today. New customers can get 15% off their first purchase from Home Field with the code BRINGTHEJUICE at checkout at homefieldapparel.com. Make sure to go check out their website, guys, and catch your Colts apparel.
So let's move over now to the defensive line. How many are you keeping on this, and who are those players?
Yeah, this is the one I really struggle with, Cody, because I really didn't. Once you got past those first 5 or 6, I didn't really like the options, to be 100% honest with you. But I'm going to roll with, obviously. Let me look at my list here. I'm going to go with, obviously, Buckner. You're going to go with Stewart, Pay, Yannick, and Lewis. I think those are your 5 best core linemen. And then outside of that, I'm going to go with Dio. I'm going to go with both Odangbo and Nadingbo. Ifedi, Eric Johnson and Brooks, I also put in there. But I'll be honest with you, this was the position group that I felt least happy about when I put it together. I thought, you know what? They could do anything. It's a coin flip with so many of these guys. You talk about a guy like, an RJ McIntosh might get inserted in there. Your guess is as good as mine, and that's definitely another position, as you mentioned earlier, that might be worth going out and looking at, on the waiver market.
I think they do, but for the sake of this final 53-man roster, which obviously I feel like it's going to be subject to change, and one of these guys that's on the fringe of the roster might get cut. But looking at it right now, I kept 9. I had Kwity Paye, Yannick Ngakoue, Tyquan Lewis, Dio Dangbo. I also kept Adenigbo as well. But the one that you didn't mention that I thought had a nice game yesterday was Ben Banogu. So I'm going to keep him on the roster for now, and I'm only going to roll with 3 interior defensive linemen, thinking that there's probably going to be a vet signing here, like a Malcolm Brown or somebody like that, kind of that backup 1 tech behind Grover Stewart. So I kept Stewart, Buckner, and Eric Johnson as it stands right now, but I am very subject to change on that. If they bring in maybe one of those, maybe they go in favor of like a Curtis Brooks or something in that department. But as it stands right now, you're right. I don't think this unit is set in stone at all, especially at the interior of the defensive line. So I'm looking for them to maybe sign one guy there, and then I'd be pretty happy about where this defensive line is from top to bottom. So keep a 9 there, which I believe, did you keep 9 as well?
I did. Yeah, we went with 9.
Okay, awesome. So let's move on now to the linebacker core. How many linebackers are you keeping, and who are those players?
I'm going to go with 6. I think that for me, this actually wasn't very hard. Honestly, I think the 6 stood out when it comes down to it. I went with Shaq Leonard, obviously. You got Okereke, EJ Speed, and then, of course, rounding it out. I like Sterling Weatherford. I like JoJo Doman as well as obviously Zaire Franklin's going to play a major role. So I'm going to go with all of those guys. I just think those 6 stood out above the rest, and it really wasn't that hard for me, Cody, honestly. I thought those guys played pretty well, and I thought they cemented their position, and I thought they even reinforced that last night, in the game against the Buccaneers.
I agree with you 100%. I'm going with 6, those exact players. So that's perfect. That's open and shut. Pretty easy there. All right, cornerbacks now. How many corners are you keeping? I think we might differ here.
Yeah.
Your guys.
This is going to be – so I actually I've got 6 corners. So I don't know how many you rode with, but I went with 6 just because it's a passing league. And I went with Rodgers, Faison, Kenny Moore, and Gilmore. Obviously, those are your staples. I went with Tony Brown and Chesley rounding it out. Don't love the depth there, if I'm being 100% honest, but those are the best 6 to me. Of course, you've got, guys like Dallas Flowers and stuff that could flex in there as well. But I didn't go with him. I think he's more of a practice squad guy. But those are the 6 that I went with, Cody.
Well, I just swapped out Brown with Flowers because Flowers showed you some special teams prowess.
Yeah.
So that's why I put him on there as well. So I kept 6 as well, but we just flip-flopped who was the final 6.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, no arguments with me there. I mean, if you said, "Hey, I want to go with this guy over that guy," I think the justification for Brown for me is he just knows the Gus Bradley system, and sometimes
Sure.
they like to keep a guy who's familiar and's been in that system and around a veteran presence. But yeah, it's a 100% coin flip when it comes down to that for me.
Yeah, and my philosophy is always coming down to special teams.
Yeah.
That's why I'll pick some guys like a Dallas Flowers, even though maybe Tony Brown as a pure corner right now is a little bit more refined. So
Sure.
I get both arguments. But okay, you keeping 6 there. How about the safety position? How many are you keeping?
Safety, I'm 5. So I
Okay.
roll with 5, and this was also not super hard for me. Nick Cross, McLeod, Blackman, of course. I've really liked what Thomas has done. Also, I think he can actually provide some real value on this football team. And then I went with Denbo. I didn't love that one, but I mean, it was just kind of a matter of, you mentioned special teams, and stuff like that. I didn't think we had a lot of other options in that particular situation. So I went with Dembo as my 5th safety as of now.
Okay. And I kept 4 safeties there. Blackman, Thomas as the backup free safety because obviously Armani Watts got injured out for the year, and Nick Cross and Rodney McLeod. So I kept 4 and I kept 6 corners. So 10 DBs
Yeah.
in total there. And I feel pretty good about that, honestly. I feel like I maximized the amount of talent that I had. Like I'd rather keep I'd rather keep a Dallas Flowers over a guy like Trevor Denbo. That's just me.
Sure.
That's kind of my reasoning behind it.
Absolutely. I mean, and I couldn't disagree with any of that. I think as long as you've got enough bodies back there to play during the season, we all kind of know what happened, in that Baltimore Ravens game last year where we just broke down and we were just, we were on life support and they came back and won that game. You just need the capable football players of being able to go out there and get stops and get off the football field. So yeah, 100%, no arguments out of me on that.
Yep, and then pretty simple in terms of the special teams as
Yep.
well. We got our kicker, we got our punter, who I thought looked phenomenal yesterday, Matt Hawk, and then we got our long snapper and Luke Rhodes. So that's 53.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think what do we have? 3 differences, I think, across the board. It's not going to be, these huge variances at this point. Players have pretty much staked their claim to be on this football team. And I think it's pretty even across the board. We can all disagree or agree on 3 quarterbacks, 2 quarterbacks, and some of those numbers. But other than that, and you mentioned Hawk, I mean, he looked really good. I was very impressed with his ability to punt. Very weird to see a guy punt off of their left foot. I don't know that I've ever really seen that live, but I mean, that ball comes off a little bit different. But he was a pleasant surprise, and very encouraging. I would say that at the very least.
And I thought he did a really good job as well. An underrated thing. I mean, he did a really good job of holding too. Like that was kind of Rigo's thing, and he did a really good job. And Blankenship was perfect. So want to give him a special shout out because he did really good. I think Zach Hugh was the MVP of that game yesterday. He was phenomenal at punter. And so obviously, whenever you hear one of the best punters in the league goes down for the year, tears his Achilles, you're like, oh crap, we're screwed. But credit him, Matt Hawk. So far, he's looked really good, and I'm really encouraged and looking forward to kind of what this special teams unit does because I think there's a new energy with this special teams. I'm really excited. I thought they played really, really good yesterday. Feels like they shored some things up. Maybe they were struggling at. And yeah, I'm looking forward to a good year from this unit.
100%. I think you've got the right guy, the right energy, Bubba Ventrone. And I think also just having some of your better players out there on special teams really kind of started to show yesterday. Better at getting down the field, better at getting to people. I mean, there were some really nice special teams plays yesterday. And that was something last year so underrated that we did so well last year with some block kicks and block punts and just flipping the field. I mean, it was really, really a big part of our success as we were trying to kind of come back after we started the season off so poorly. So yeah, definitely encouraged by that. And Hawk is best case scenario when you lose, like you mentioned earlier, you lose your star punter. What are you going to do? And you got a guy who kind of basically fell into your lap, really. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, he just literally was just right there waiting for you. And yeah, super encouraged by him.
Absolutely. So, guys, that'll do it for our look at our predictions for the Colts' final 53-man roster. Let us know your thoughts on this. Are there some positions that you'd maybe rather pick a player over another? Do you agree more with Zach's final 53-man roster prediction or mine? Or do you have your own that's maybe completely different? Let us know all those things in the comments below. Obviously, guys, be sure to check out Zach's channel over at No Horsing Around. They do some great Colts work and have really been putting in a lot of content out for Colts Nation, so be sure to check them out. And obviously, keep it here for when the final 53-man roster is officially announced on Tuesday. That'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.